Yes, we are discussing about the meaning of a theory. What is the meaning of a particular theory? Theory means it is set of related assumptions. Set of related assumptions which are based on the hypothesis, and the hypothesis can be testified, that can be the meaning of a particular theory. Theory means a set of assumptions and which assumptions are testified with the help of certain hypotheses. Then there are certain prerequisites things for the theory or for a good theory. What are those requirements? First requirement is theory must be testified with certain procedures. And a good theory is based on certain hypothesis or a particular hypothesis. And a good theory is also based on number of observations. It's not we can formulate or we can develop a theory with the only on one observation, or it depends on one observation. No. Theory is based on number of observations, not on single observations. Similarly, theory must be testified and must be based on specific hypothesis, and it is also a heuristic in nature. Heuristic means we can validate the theory later on whether a particular theory is applicable in this current time or not. So there are certain requirements for a good theory which we should follow while we are considering or developing a particular theory in psychology. Theory must be testified, it must be based on number of observations, not in single observations, and we can have the heuristic in nature, or theory must be heuristic in nature so that we can validate a particular theory. Okay, so based on the nature of theory, there are certain functions of a particular theory. What are those functions? What are the functions of a particular theory? First functions is organization functions. Theory must be organized in a framework. Particular framework. We can understand a particular theory in a framework, in a template, or in a outline. So that we can understand its various aspects. Various aspects of a particular theory. So these are the certain functions of a particular theory, or we can say the functions of a systems of psychology. Organization's functions must be there in a particular theory, so that various facts and principles of a particular object form a meanings, or the data can be understood in terms of meaning. organization functions must be there while we are talking about the particular theory. Second is heuristic functions. As I already revealed that heuristic means theory also generates new findings, new research. And research can be experimental and non-experimental. Heuristic means the theory have the heuristic functions which generate new research and new findings, and finding can be the experimental and non-experimental. Experiment means which are based on certain experiment. As we know the meaning of experiment, that is the set and control conditions in which we establish the causal relationship between the variables. Or we can say the functional relationship established in a particular environment. That environment is in a controlled setting. That is in a controlled setting. So, heuristic functions include both experimental and non-experimental research. Non-experimental, you can say, we can have no control on the variables. Just we are studying the variables where they are, but we have no control over their environmental variables. And that can be in natural setting or that can be in another settings or in free environment. That is not based on particular experiment. That may be based on some survey, on observations, on certain questionnaire, on certain tests. Those are non-experimental. Okay, so second function is heuristic one. Next functions of a theory or systems is called closure functions. Closure. Closure means theory must have the functions of closures, which means theory fill the gap between the literatures, between the knowledge. Theory always provide the gap. We always provide the information to fill the gap between the informations, or which has been left by the other researcher, so that new researcher, new theory developer can fill that particular gap in knowledge filled by the theory. The closure functions can be the important one of a theory that always close or fill the particular gap created by the absence of particular fact, which are not known earlier, but because of theory it can be understood now. So the theory is having the closure functions, which means it fills the gap in knowledge. Next functions can be the modal functions. Modal means the theory is sharing, or theory tend to share some basic conventions. Basic conventions, thoughts, feeling, emotions, sentiments of each other. So that has the moral functions. It shares the knowledge related to the sentiments, emotions, thoughts, process, ideas. It provides certain things. So based on those, it has moral functions in it or in it. theory. The next one is the limited function. Limited. There are different theory or systems in psychology which are according to its basic element or tenets, and that determines what should be included in a particular theory and what should not be included in a particular, or what is included in a particular system and what is left out from the particular system or theory. So, in that sense, the theory has the limited functions. Means it talk about only certain things, only limited words, only limited knowledge. As I already tell that theory is having certain assumptions that is in a specific manner, not in general. Theory talks about the specificity or specific things. Therefore, it had certain functions related to limitations or limited functions, we can say. As we can have example like the behavioristic school or behavioristic systems are focused on the subject matter of psychology in terms of objective behavior, or it is the science of behavior, and it excludes the consciousness. Whereas the structuralisms school focus on consciousness. So we can answer that, or based on this example, we can answer theory has limited area, or they talk about certain things only, or they talk about specific things. So, in conclusions, we can say there are certain functions of a theory and there are certain prerequisite requirements for the psychological theory. And you know, this theory is a set of assumptions which are based on some hypothesis, and the hypothesis can be testified, verified with this we can conclude about the theory, nature of theory, what is the requirement of a good theory, and what are the functions of a